Are we finally heading to a balanced market? Is it actually going to be a buyer's market? What exactly does that mean? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through a Stories article where they take us through what the Bank of Montreal is saying. And make sure you stay until the end because the Bank of Montreal actually addresses whether or not there's going to be a crash coming. So, let's get to it. Hi everybody, my name is Connie Sarvanandan and I'm a real estate agent and investor here in Toronto and the GTA. So let's get right to the Stories article because the Stories article is talking about what's happening in the Toronto market right now, and they're actually looking at some real estate stats including new listings to sales ratio, which is a key indicator of where the market is heading. So let's go straight to the article. Okay, so this is the Stories article, and as always, I will link to the article below so you can get the information directly. So what this article is saying is Ontario is moving towards a buyer's market, and here's what that means. In his most recent data snapshot, BMO's chief economist, Douglas Porter, so that's the Bank of Montreal's chief economist, said that the Greater Toronto area is all of the sudden looking to be in the buyer's market terrain. And so what we're seeing across the board is that we're seeing price drops in the past 2 months, particularly in smaller markets. And so buyers are really excited because that could mean that we could be in buyer's market territory in the next few months, according to Douglas Porter. What Stories is saying is, okay, so these are the kind of things that are coming up in headlines that we're heading towards a buyer's market. What does all of this mean? And it often leads to confusion. So what this article is doing is really explaining what a buyer's market is and also explaining what Douglas Porter is saying and why he's saying it. So what does that mean? A buyer's market by definition occurs when purchasers are more advantageous situation than sellers as a result of the number of homes on the market. So basically a buyer's market is that there are more homes for sales than there are buyers. And for the last 2 years, there have been more buyers than homes. And so it was definitely a seller's market. So when it becomes more homes than buyers, that typically leads to homes sitting on the market for longer and can cause a downward pressure on prices. So this would be good news for buyers because if the inventory does increase and you do get more homes for sales than actual buyers, then you will see homes sitting longer and you could see prices dropping because there's just not the competition that we've been used to for the last 2 years. So what they're saying is this is a stark change to what we've seen throughout the pandemic, where virtually every single market in Ontario was in seller's territory. Inventory remained low while demand remained high. And as a result, you had bidding wars and skyrocketing home prices. And what that led to was actually buyers being priced out of the market. So part of what's happening here is not just that more homes are coming on the market, but there is also buyers that had to come out of the market because they were priced out of the market because the prices went so high. So now, as of April, we're starting to see a noticeable shift in the province's region, which is the GTA. And as a result, the sales to listings ratio plunged to just 45%, a big change from the 70% average in the previous 12 months. So when we were in seller's territory, it was 70%. Now that we're at 45%, what they're saying is in a balanced market, that usually lands between 40 and 60% ratio, and we're at 45%. So if it goes much lower, then we will actually be in a buyer's market. So for those hoping that the move towards a buyer's market means Ontario real estate prices are going to come crashing down across the board, they're likely going to be left wanting. Although the markets, particularly smaller cities on the outskirts of the GTA, are seeing prices dip, Porter is saying that right now a stalling of prices is what to be expected. So it's true prices are coming down. It's true that, more inventory is coming up. And we're also seeing, that we could be moving towards a buyer's market. We're definitely in balanced territory right now. But according to Porter, we are not going to see a crash. We're just going to see a stalling of prices. So what he's saying is we're not going to see the crazy price acceleration that we've seen for the last 2 years. We're actually just going to be stalling. And so what the sales to listing ratio is now telling us is that prices are about to go from 20% gains to a sudden stall. Porter's projections were echoed by a recent TREB report. So TREB is the Toronto Real Estate Board. Their chief market analyst, Jason Mercer, said that although the number of sales is falling and listings are going up, market conditions are still tight to support annual price growth, despite prices declining somewhat month over month in April. Basically, what they're saying is, yes, we're seeing a decline, and we're seeing a decline month over month. So, January, February were high, and we might be seeing price declines in March, April. But what he's saying is we're still going to see an overall growth in prices for the full year versus in 2022 versus 2021. And in line with TREB's forecast, there is evidence that buyers are responding to the increased choice in the marketplace, with average and benchmark prices dipping month over month. It's anticipated there will be enough competition between buyers to support continued price growth relative to 2021, but the annual pace of growth will moderate in the coming months. He's saying that there's still going to be growth. How much that growth is going to be, definitely not what we've seen in the past, and it's probably going to be significantly less. And what Bank of Montreal is saying, it's probably going to be stalled for the time being, but they're expecting an overall growth. Just month to month, we're going down. Essentially, buyers will still have to put in higher offers compared to pre-pandemic pricing, but they'll be competing against fewer buyers and sometimes not at all. So we're not going to pre-pandemic pricing according to these guys. We're just going to be seeing much lower pricing than what we've seen during the pandemic, particularly January and February. Okay, so this is the Stories article, and like I always do, I will make sure I link it down below so that you can go through the article at your own pace if you like. So the Stories article says, Ontario is moving towards a buyer's market, and here's what that means. So the first thing they do is they talk about BMO's chief economist, Douglas Porter, and what Douglas Porter is saying. So BMO stands for the Bank of Montreal, and it's one of our big banks, and this is their chief economist. So basically, in his most recent data snapshot, he's saying the GTA is suddenly getting into a buyer's market terrain. And with many markets across Ontario seeing price drops in the past 2 months, particularly in some of the smaller cities outside of Toronto, would-be buyers across the province are eagerly welcoming the news of a buyer's market being on the horizon. So we are seeing price drops specifically outside of the GTA and some in the GTA. And so there's hope that these price drops mean that we're moving from a seller's market to a buyer's market. So with this kind of news making the headlines and giving hope to would-be buyers, it can oftentimes seem confusing on exactly what is a buyer's market and what it means to somebody who is looking to purchase a home. So that's what this article hopes to explain. So what is a buyer's market? A buyer's market, by definition, occurs when purchasers are in a more advantageous situation than sellers as a result of the number of homes on the market. So basically, in a seller's market, there are more buyers than homes for sale. And in a buyer's market, there are more homes for sale than there are buyers. So for the past 2 years, we've had a seller's market because there was not enough homes for sale to satisfy all the buyers that were out there. And as a result, you definitely had things like bidding wars and multiple offers. When you move to a buyer's market where you have more homes for sale than you do buyers, then what this typically leads to is homes sitting on the market for longer, and it can cause a downward pressure on pricing. So this is a big change from what we've seen throughout the pandemic. And in April, we've definitely seen a shift, especially in the GTA, where the sales to listing ratio, which is what they use to what they use as a benchmark. So this is the number of homes sold compared to the number of listings, right? And so the higher the number, the closer the higher the number, it means you're in a seller's market. The lower the number, you're in a buyer's market. So throughout the pandemic, what they're saying is, on average, it was about 70% throughout the pandemic. And that means it was clearly a seller's market. And now we're sitting just below, we're sitting at around 45%. So what does 45% mean? Well, what they're saying is a balanced market is somewhere between 40 and 60%. So we're sitting in balanced market, but we're at 45%. So if it goes below 40, then we're actually in a buyer's market. So that just means a buyer's market means there will be more homes for sale than there are actual buyers. So what does that mean for you? Well, for those hoping that the move towards a buyer's market means Ontario real estate is going to come to a crashing down across the border, that's not likely to happen according to BMO. Although some markets, particularly the smaller cities on the outskirts of the GTA, are seeing prices dip, he's saying right now a stalling of prices is what's to be expected. With the sales to listing ratio now telling us that prices are going to go from plus 20 gains to a sudden stall. So what BMO is saying is that as we move towards a buyer's market, we're definitely not going to see the price gains that we've seen for the past 2 years. And, we're definitely going to see more inventory and all of those things. But they are not expecting a crash. If anything, they're just expecting it to be flat. Now, in addition to BMO saying that, Porter's projections were echoed by the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. That's TREB. So that's TREB is saying, TREB's chief marketist is Jason Mercer, and he's saying, although the number of sales is falling and listings are growing, market conditions are still tight enough to support annual growth, despite prices declining somewhat month over month in April. So what TREB is saying is they are expecting, some month over month declines, but the overall annual growth is still going to happen. How much that is up for debate, but they're saying that prices are still going to grow 2021 to 2022. And if you think about it, the prices in January and February would actually be pushing part of that. So, if you take the prices in January and February as super high and you see some dips, the balance is going to still be there. So they're saying overall, from 2021 to 2022, you're still going to see some price growth. In line with TREB's forecast, there is evidence of buyers responding to increased choice in the marketplace, with average and benchmark prices dipping month over month. It's anticipated there will be enough competition between buyers to continue to support continued price growth relative to 2021, but the annual pace of growth will moderate in the coming months. So TREB is also saying that what's happening in the marketplace now is that buyers are actually excited about what's happening because prices are coming down, and therefore there's still activity amongst buyers there. Essentially, buyers will still have to put in higher offers compared to pre-pandemic pricing, but they'll be competing against fewer buyers and sometimes not at all. So this is big. So they're not saying it's going to come crashing down, but it's not going to be crazy like it has been for the past 2 years. Now, neither one of these guys are saying that we're going to go below pre-pandemic pricing. That's to be seen, but they're definitely not expecting any more price gains. If you're finding value in this content, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out, and it also tells us what kind of content we should be making. Whether you agree or disagree, make a comment. We love hearing from you. And if you have any questions about Toronto real estate or the GTA, Call, text, email, or WhatsApp, and we'll be sure to take care of you. Better yet, just make an appointment directly on my calendar, and I'm happy to talk real estate directly with you. The TREB CEO warned, however, there's a chance that the buyer's market wouldn't be here to stay, with many aspiring homeowners who stopped their search after being priced out of the market during the pandemic still looking for their chance to jump back in. And I think this is an important point because, when the prices went crazy, which it did, it actually priced people out of the market. Like it wasn't just that, buyers were like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It was like, I can't afford to be in the market anymore because the prices are so crazy. So if the prices start to come down, what you'll see is that affordability comes down, and that means that more people will be able to participate in housing again. And so that's what this guy is saying is the TREB CEO is saying that as affordability comes down, you'll see more buyers actively participating because all of a sudden they can afford it again. And so the other big thing that they're saying, the TREB CEO, is policymakers should not assume that because home sales are off their record peak, we can ignore the lack of inventory in the market. Buyers who have moved to the sidelines will not remain there forever, and the population of our region will continue to grow on the back of immigration. In the absence of new supply, we will build a significant amount of demand that we will need to be satisfied in the not too distant future. The ability to increase and diversify our housing supply needs will be key area of debate for the upcoming provincial and municipal elections. So the TREB CEO is saying, look, this is all fine and dandy, but until we address the supply shortage and until we address new housing opportunities, this is not going to go away. And so, what he's talking about is approving new builds, approving things like laneway housing, getting all of those things in so that we actually increase the inventory of housing available so that overall affordability is not just something that we see come and go, but something that can stay long term. That's the Stories article. So what do I think about all of this? I think a balanced market is great. I think a balanced market is exactly what we needed, because a balanced market means that nobody's in control, that it's a good spot for both. It's still a great time to be a seller in a balanced market, and it's still a great time to be a buyer in a balanced market, because nobody's in control, and therefore housing is not going to go crazy either which way. And it means that housing will sell for what it's supposed to sell for. It's not going to go excessively high. It's not going to go excessively low. And so if you are wondering when the bottom is going to hit, nobody knows. I think what you have to do is keep an eye on everything. I think you need to make sure that you're aware of pricing, and not only pricing today, but what the pricing was pre-pandemic and what the pricing could be in the future. I also know that when it comes to all of this, it's very specific to your area. So there's parts of Toronto where there has been no change. There's still multiple offers. There's still properties going over asking and all of that. And then there are parts of the GTA and surrounding areas that have seen significant drops in pricing. So I think it's very localized as well. It depends on how much your area went up to see how much your area may come down. So keep an eye on all of it, and also talk to your realtor about the trends and ask them to not just look at recent history, but look at 2 to 3 years back to see what's happened with that specific area. Because if you saw things go significantly off the charts, that's where you're probably going to see more mitigation. Whereas if you saw an area that was growing, in more moderation, then you may not see a dip in that area at all. So it's all going to be very local. Even within Toronto, there's some areas that are going to see much more highs and lows, and other areas that are just moderate. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, call, text, email, or WhatsApp, and we'll be sure to take care of you. Or better yet, just make an appointment directly in my calendar down below. I love talking Toronto real estate. Toronto and the GTA real estate is always moving and dynamic, and I love talking about it, and I'm happy to help you out. My name is Connie Sarvanandan, and thank you for watching.